The stability of the Government of National Unity has once again come under the spotlight. This as the two main parties in the Government of National Unity, the ANC and the DA, were at each other's throats over the signing of bills such as the Expropriation Act. Wits University's Professor Susan Booysens joins me now for a discussion on the continued disagreements in the GNU. Prof, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Now, you penned an article titled Unity or Uncertainty, Unraveling South Africa's Coalition Chessboard. How would you describe the current dynamics of coalition politics in South Africa? And what factors do you certainly think stand out in terms of what contributes to the stability or instability of these coalitions?
Yes, this is indeed a very interesting, very important theme to take stock of what is working and what not in South Africa's very new coalitions game. And in this piece that I wrote that you're talking about, I decided it is time to take stock of exactly what are the driving forces, what are the new rules that are emerging in South Africa, especially at national level, but also at the other levels of coalition politics, because the political circumstances are so different from previous situations where we've had coalition governments. And so to take a step back and to assess what is actually happening, that was my objective in this piece. And I come to the conclusion that it's really a very complex game. And both the two main parties, the ANC and the DA, they are driven by often matching dynamics. For both of them, it is about optimizing their longer-term electoral benefit, their standing with South Africa's electorate. And both these parties really derive benefits from being in the coalition government. And so there are many de facto implicit rules that emerge there. And one of these rules that I detect is really that it is fine to do electoral politics, your own party political benefit on a daily basis, as hard as possible in a coalition. You know the other party is also doing it, and both mutually probably recognize that the other is playing to its own audiences and to its own constituencies. But they also need each other in this situation. And we, therefore, for many varied reasons, I come to the conclusion here that that at this stage at least, things can always change. But at this stage, all indications are that there's a lot of contests, a lot of arguments, a lot of declarations even of mutual despise, if not hatred, between these parties. That is part of the game. They like to remind us very often, both the two main parties in this coalition, that they do it for the sake of the people and the country. And that may be so, but if they really want to make this coalition work, and if they want to continue reaping benefit from it, both these parties had better be very sure that the government works in terms of delivery as well. Because if there is a nice détente between the two main parties, but government doesn't improve and the coalition government is not seen to get things working and improving in South Africa, then both these parties are going to come short.
So, Prof, I mean, in your piece, you also speak to the ANC prefers to interpret the 2024 election result as an electoral aberration, said to be corrected once the MK party, epitomizing its strategic setback, has been neutralized. Select problem child provinces to be reconfigured, and the ANC reinvented as authentically renewed. Is this supposed belief by the ANC self-destructive, or do you truly believe it's a path for them to find themselves back to that two-thirds majority in parliament?
I really do not see the evidence that this is happening for the ANC. Things are not improving that dramatically. They are, I think, at this stage, not even within reach of another outright majority. I'm not even imagining a two-thirds majority. But the ANC, I know in the previous round of elections, they had a really firm belief that they needn't try to win over new support. If they can just bring back to vote for them those voters that had abstained in previous elections, they up to very late in last year's election campaign, really believed that they stand a good chance of still getting that outright majority. And even if of course, if the MK party had not been there, they might very well just have come short. And this time around, we see many references in ANC discourses to the fact that MK party is a party that had deprived them of their outright majority. And I definitely do not know much of the details of all their plans on how they may hope to be sorting out the problem of the MK party. But I certainly pick up that they think if that party collapses, if it does not sustain itself into a next election, then the ANC, as long as it is authentically renewed and cleared of corruption, which of course are two other tasks that could be almost impossible to achieve.
Right.
But I picked up that they think there is still a chance that they can do it. I, however, do not see in my own research those pieces falling into place.
Just to close off, Prof, we are running out of time. How do these smaller parties within the GNU have an influence in terms of the dynamics between the ANC and the DA?
Well, they're always there as a backup. The ANC still thinks of most of these small parties. There are 8 small parties besides the ANC and the DA in this coalition. ANC thinks of them in terms of backup should the DA actually really leave this coalition at some point in future. The ANC would need some of these small parties, maybe with the EFF, maybe even without EFF, but they would come very close to an outright majority just with the help of most of these small parties. So the ANC definitely invests energy and attention in them. But in the daily running of the coalition, most of these parties are quite quiet, haven't got very strong policy agendas that come into the coalition. So they struggle to assert themselves. Aside from probably the IFP and the Patriotic Alliance, those two stand out more strongly. The type of leadership they have come into the national attention span. So, but it is very difficult for those tiny parties to really make themselves seen and heard, to assert themselves in this coalition.
Well, Prof, it's certainly going to be a very interesting next 5 years for this GNU. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Professor Susan Booysens, who's speaking to us about an article that she penned for News 24.